Hello. Hi. Sorry, I'm confusing myself by clicking over to the live scene and then looking at Twitch, which is on a delay, and being distracted by chat as well. Twitch Mobile's been Twitch Mobile. I have only bad things to say about the Twitch Mobile experience. Hello, everybody. Hi, I am Sam, and you are listening to Chilliteracy, where this week our three men will continue to be on the Bummel. We may hear that term used in the course of the text. Will it be defined? Who could say? No, maybe not. But hello, hi. Yeah, hope we're all doing well. Parola, thank you for pointing out that at the episode 13 of Barchester Towers was mislabeled as episode 12. I think that's because I'd copied the title across from the previous one. I just forgot to change the number. Thank you for pointing that out. I just caught that today, because I've stopped getting notifications, apparently, from YouTube when people leave comments. But yeah, thank you. Llama, also hello. And Lady Mephistopheles, hello. Yeah, hi, hello. How are we all doing? I hope we're all well. I was also distracted because... So, today, unfortunately, we have a little bit of, that problem that can come up in some of these older texts. Let's just jump right into it. I don't want to spend like ages discussing this subject because it's a little bit unpleasant. But we have the problem that sometimes rears its head in. I mean, let's not pretend that racism's gone away, but some really uncomfortable use of language, and they so the chapter that we're starting on almost immediately launches into a bit of a digression, as he puts it, that I'm not going to read aloud. So I've just marked that out to myself to skip it. Click onto the text. You can see why, but you can probably guess. And it's a little bit disappointing. And what I was also doing was just looking ahead, because there was another bit that comes up later, spoilers for chapter 8, which I'm hoping to get to. There's a bit that describes, he's talking about Prague and talking about the Jews that live there. And from as far as I can tell, from reading it and just really trying to look at this and scrutinize it and go over it mentally and just be okay, you are literally just talking about these people that live there. You're not being derogatory. You're not leaning into stereotypes or saying, unpleasant, derogatory things about them because of this. No, okay, I think so. I really, this is the balance of things. There's a bit that I've looked at has gone, that is flagrantly racist. I'm not reading that. We're just gonna skip that and pretend it didn't happen. But I'll, highlight it here. So if you look and go, oh, good grief, wow. And then this other bit, I think I feel comfortable reading because it doesn't feel derogatory. But certainly in today's political climate, I mean, at any time, anti-Semitism isn't good. But today, with the world being what it is, it feels like an even more. Just hey, just be real careful with what kind of opinions you might be given voice to. And yeah, so I just thought I'd like that up. But that comes up in chapter 8, so we can discuss that closer to the break, I guess. But yeah, hi everybody, hello. How are we? Are we all okay? The story's probably incoherent enough that it won't matter for the plot if we skip things, so that's good. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and it's just the bit that I am skipping just sort of comes out of nowhere. It's right, which yeah, he does. He's just hey, and here's a tangent, and this one is just no, not that one. But yeah, the other one is he's literally just talking about a section of Prague, and it's okay, that I think this is okay, which I think all of which really is to say, I apologize if in my sort of lean in closer reading, trying to do a little bit of a sensitivity reading of it, if I've missed something that's oh yeah, actually No, that's not cool. Yeah, we'd have tangents, but not those kind of tangents. Exactly. So, I don't want to, as I said, I don't want to dwell too long on it because it's not fun. Just thought I'd flag that up before I get going. Yeah, I don't know. Do I have much more to say? I'm possibly considering splitting this one into... oh, Angeline, hello. Thank you very much for the 24 months. Good grief. Thank you very much. It is much appreciated. I hope you're doing well. Or as well as can be. And yeah, as I was just saying, I'm thinking possibly about splitting this one up into 3, because they didn't feel like... I try to find a good halfway point, split the stream into 2 1-hour chunks, and they didn't really feel like a good one of those. It really feels like each chapter is about... well, one chapter is very long, but they just didn't feel like a good point to take a break. So I'm just going to be keeping an eye on the clock as I read. And yeah, we might have two breaks. So decadent. Well enough? Well, good. I'm glad to hear it. Nice collection of buttons, yeah. Yeah, exactly. I get 24 buttons? I don't know. Oh, grief, we're going to need a new bookworm, aren't we? Oh, no. Time continues to move forward. Yeah, I don't know. Do I have much more to say? I have possibly, I think maybe, possibly, maybe, could have, might, maybe, possibly acquired a film to watch on the Discord during book week. I think I might have said somewhere else. I'm not sure. I have partially tested it out, and then we'll test out the methods by which we could watch it collaboratively collectively on Discord. Not collaboratively. It's just me putting it in a drive and pressing play. Yeah, I may have something for us to watch, except when I tested it today, because, why make anything straightforward? If you have a legally purchased, and this isn't like in inverted quotes, this is literally a legally purchased Blu-ray drive for your computer, and you try to play a legally purchased Blu-ray disc in that drive, you will be stopped, because you will be treated like a pirate. You will be not like the fun, the fun kind of pirate, the kind of criminal that, is worse than anything else because you are committing copyright theft. And, I have opinions. I feel like people should buy things and pay artists and creators for their work. But I don't appreciate that when you actually do that. Type of pirate that would download a car, exactly. I don't appreciate that when you do that, you're suddenly just stopped and denied, and you have to jump through a whole bunch of, frankly, dodgy-looking steps, where people on Reddit tell you, oh yeah, you should go to this site that looks like it was designed in 1993, and download this piece of software. And then it works, but you're not sure how or why. And so I did that the other day, and it did work. And then the temporary license that you get access to use that piece of software expires. And so then you have to wait for new temporary access to be granted. And it's a whole faff. And so I just want to watch the film. This is why people download films. This is why people do this, because you just do that, and then you get it, and then you can use it. And this is like, no, you're a criminal. Why? Because you're trying to watch stuff. Yeah, I don't want to rent it from you. I want to own the disc. Scum. But yeah, that's been... But I think I roughly know what to do and how to do it. The unfeasibly complex task of playing a film. So we might be able to watch something cool, which is relevant to this channel, not just like something picked at random. Something cool. That was part of book week. So yeah, look forward to that. if I can get subtitles working. Otherwise, one or two people in the audience will be fine, but the rest of us will be kind of stuck. Trying to do things legally must be suspicious. Exactly. Who even does that? Apparently not me. But yeah. Anyway, now that we've talked about all the incriminating things, should we start? Your link is pinned at the top of chat, as I say. We'll be skipping a hefty chunk right off the bat. If you click through and if you're reading along, you'll see why. But otherwise, yeah. I don't know if Lucy's going to drop in. She is away and working today. Been hella busy the last couple of days. So I'm not expecting her to show up. But, you know, if she does, say hi. Make her feel welcome. Yeah, otherwise, if we're already and ensconced in, good word, in whatever nooks or other positions of comfort work for you, being crafty corner, trying to make this shawl, make some sort of shawl-like shape. Oh, good luck. I really need to get back to knitting. I haven't done it in ages. But I have been doing the other hobbies that I picked up, so, you know, swings and roundabouts. Yeah, if we're ready. As I say, I'll keep an eye on how I'm going. We might split this into 3, but we'll see. Does my mute... Do I remember which is the mute button this time? Hell yeah, I do. That's gaming. Right. Shall we begin? This is 3 Men on the Bummel by Jerome K. Jerome. Chapter 6. Why we went to Hanover. Something they do better abroad. The art of polite foreign conversation as taught in English schools. A true history now told for the first time. The French joke as provided for the amusement of British youth. Fatherly instincts of Harris. The road waterer considered as an artist. Patriotism of George. What Harris ought to have done. What he did. We save Harris's life. A sleepless city. The cab horse as a critic. We arrived at Hamburg on Friday after a smooth and uneventful voyage. From Hamburg we travelled to Berlin by way of Hanover. It is not the most direct route. At first, from some reason or other, Hanover strikes you as an uninteresting town, but it grows upon you. It is, in reality, 2 towns, a place of broad, modern, handsome streets and tasteful gardens, side by side with a 16th century town, where old timbered houses overhang the narrow lanes, where through low archways one catches glimpses of galleried courtyards, once often thronged, no doubt, with troops of horse, or blocked with lumbering coach and 6, waiting its rich merchant owner and its fat, placid Frau, but where now children and chickens scuttle at their will, while over the carved balconies hang dingy clothes a-drying. A singularly English atmosphere hovers over Hanover, especially on Sundays, when its shuttered shops and clanging bells give to it the suggestion of a sunnier London. Nor was this British Sunday atmosphere apparent only to myself, else I might have attributed it to imagination. Even George felt it. Harris and I, returning from a short stroll with our cigars after lunch on the Sunday afternoon, found him peacefully slumbering in the smoke-room's easiest chair. "After all," said Harris, "there is something about the British Sunday that appeals to the man with English blood in his veins. I should be sorry to see it altogether done away with, let the new generation say what it will." And taking one each end of the ample settee, we kept George company. To Hanover one should go, they say, to learn the best German. The disadvantage is that outside Hanover, which is only a small province, nobody understands this best German. Thus you have to decide whether to speak good German and remain in Hanover, or bad German and travel about. Germany being separated so many centuries into a dozen principalities, is unfortunate in possessing a variety of dialects. Germans from Posen, wishful to converse with men of Württemberg, have to talk as often as not in French or English, and young ladies who have received an expensive education in Westphalia surprise and disappoint their parents by being unable to understand a word said to them in Mecklenburg. An English-speaking foreigner, it is true, would find himself equally nonplussed among the Yorkshire wolds or in the purlieus of Whitechapel, but the cases are not on all fours. Throughout Germany, it is not only in the country districts, and among the uneducated that dialects are maintained. Every province has practically its own language, of which it is proud and retentive. An educated Bavarian will admit to you that, academically speaking, the North German is more correct, but he will continue to speak South German and to teach it to his children. In the course of the century, I am inclined to think that Germany will solve her difficulty in this respect by speaking English. Every boy and girl in Germany, above the peasant class, speaks English. Were English pronunciation less arbitrary, there is not the slightest doubt but that in the course of a very few years, comparatively speaking, it would become the language of the world. All foreigners agree that, grammatically, it is the easiest language of any to learn. A German, comparing it with his own language, where every word in every sentence is governed by at least 4 distinct and separate rules, tells you that English has no grammar. A good many English people would seem to have come to the same conclusion, but they are wrong. As a matter of fact, there is an English grammar, and one of these days our schools will recognize the fact, and it will be taught to our children, penetrating maybe even to literary and journalistic circles. But, at present, we appear to agree with the foreigner that it is a quantity neglectable. English pronunciation is the stumbling block to our progress. English spelling would seem to have been designed chiefly as a disguise to pronunciation. It is a clever idea, calculated to check presumption on the part of the foreigner, but for that he would learn it in a year. For they have a way of teaching languages in Germany that is not our way. And the consequence is that when the German youth or maiden leaves the gymnasium or high school at 15, it, as in Germany one conveniently must say, can understand and speak the tongue it has been learning. In England, we have a method that, for obtaining the least possible result at the greatest possible expenditure of time and money, is perhaps unequalled. An English boy who has been through a good middle-class school in England can talk to the Frenchman, slowly and with difficulty, about female gardeners and aunts. Conversation which, to a man possessed perhaps of neither, is liable to pall. Possibly, if he be a bright exception, he may be able to tell the time, or make a few guarded observations concerning the weather. No doubt, he could repeat a goodly number of irregular verbs by heart. Only, as a matter of fact, few foreigners care to listen to their own irregular verbs recited by young Englishmen. Likewise, he may be able to remember a choice selection of grotesquely involved French idioms, such as no modern Frenchman has ever heard or understands when he does hear. The explanation is that, in 9 cases out of 10, he has learnt French from Anne's first course. The book was originally written for a joke by a witty Frenchman who had resided for some years in England. He intended it as a satire upon the conversational powers of British society. From this point of view it was distinctly good. He submitted it to a London publishing firm. The manager was a shrewd man. He read the book through. Then he sent for the author. "This book of yours?" he said to the author, is very clever. I have laughed over it myself till the tears came. I am delighted to hear you say so, replied the pleased Frenchman. I tried to be truthful without being unnecessarily offensive. It is most amusing, concurred the manager, and yet published as a harmless joke. I feel it would fail. The author's face fell, and so did mine. Joey is at the door and wishes to come in. Just get myself back in. Right. No. 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 No, we did cuddles. We did. Big cuddles. Don't lie to me or them. Right. He's had some scritches on the top of his head. He is not happy with this. It is most amusing, concurred the manager, and yet published as a harmless joke. I feel it would fail. The author's face fell. Its humour, proceeded the manager, would be denounced as forced and extravagant. It would amuse the thoughtful and intelligent, but from a business point of view that portion of the public are never worth considering. But I have an idea, continued the manager. He glanced round the room to be sure they were alone, and, leaning forward, sunk his voice to a whisper. My notion is to publish it as a serious work for the use of schools. Joey, don't tell anyone. This is a good idea. The author stared, speechless. I know the English schoolman, said the manager. This book will appeal to him. It will exactly fit in with his method. Nothing sillier, nothing more useless for the purpose will he ever discover. He will smack his lips over the book as a puppy licks up blacking. The author, sacrificing art to greed, consented. They altered the title and added a vocabulary, but left the book otherwise as it was. Joey, what are you doing, mate? Could you... Nope. Nope. Going for the window. Okay. Why can he go weeks, literal actual weeks, without causing a problem? And then suddenly deciding, hey, there's an open window, I'm going to go for that. I need that. It's great. It's good. You go outside, people on the internet will yell at me. He shows me he loves me. This is trying to get out. This is not that. I'm sorry to tell you. Are you going to try it again? Are you waiting for me to be doing something so that you can then cause as much of a ruckus as possible? Yeah. Well, don't cry about it. Go in the cube. Okay, we'll sit there. The author, sacrificing art to greed, consented. They altered the title and added a vocabulary, but left the book otherwise as it was. The result is known to every schoolboy. Arne became the palladium of English philological education. If it no longer retains its ubiquity, it is because something even less adaptable to the object in view has since been invented. Lest, in spite of all, the British schoolboy should obtain, even from the like of Arne, some glimmering of French, the British educational method further handicaps him by bestowing upon him the assistance of what is termed in the prospectus a native gentleman. This native French gentleman, who, by the by, is generally a Belgian, is no doubt a most worthy person, and can, it is true, understand and speak his own language with tolerable fluency. There his qualifications cease. Invariably he is a man with a quite remarkable inability to teach anybody anything. Indeed, he would seem to be chosen not so much as an instructor as an amuser of youth. He is always a comic figure. No Frenchman of a dignified appearance would be engaged for any English school. If he possess by nature a few harmless peculiarities, calculated to cause merriment, so much the more is he esteemed by his employers. The class naturally regards him as an animated joke. The 2 to 4 hours a week that are deliberately wasted on this ancient farce are looked forward to by the boys as a merry interlude in an otherwise monotonous existence. And then, when the proud parent takes his son and heir to Dieppe merely to discover that the lad does not know enough to call a cab, he abuses not the system, but its innocent victim. I confine my remarks to French, because that is the only language we attempt to teach our youth. An English boy who could speak German would be looked down upon as unpatriotic. Why we waste time in teaching even French according to this method I have never been able to understand. A perfect unacquaintance with a language is respectable, but putting aside comic journalists and lady novelists, for whom it is a business necessity, this smattering of French which we are so proud to possess only serves to render us ridiculous. In the German school, this method is somewhat different. 1 hour every day is devoted to the same language. The idea is not to give the lad time between each lesson to forget what he learned at the last. The idea is for him to get on. There is no comic foreigner provided for his amusement. The desired language is taught by a German schoolmaster who knows it inside out as thoroughly as he knows his own. Maybe this system does not provide the German youth with that perfection of foreign accent for which the British tourist is in every land remarkable, but it has other advantages. The boy does not call his master froggy or sausage, nor prepare for the French or English hour any exhibition of homely wit whatever. He just sits there, and for his own sake tries to learn that foreign tongue with as little trouble to everybody concerned as possible. When he has left school he can talk, not about penknives and gardeners and aunts merely, but about European politics, history, Shakespeare, or the musical classes, according to the turn the conversation may take. Viewing the German people from an Anglo-Saxon standpoint, it may be that in this book I shall find occasion to criticize them, but on the other hand there is much that we might learn from them, and in the matter of common sense as applied to education, they can give us 99 in 100 and beat us with one hand. The beautiful wood of the Eilenried bounds Hanover on the south and west, and here occurred a sad drama in which Harris took a prominent part. We were riding our machines through this wood on the Monday afternoon in the company of many other cyclists, for it is a favourite resort with the Hanoverians on a sunny afternoon, and its shady pathways are then filled with happy, thoughtless folk. Among them rode a young and beautiful girl on a machine that was new. She was evidently a novice on the bicycle. One felt instinctively that there would come a moment when she would require help, and Harris, with his accustomed chivalry, suggested we should keep near her. Harris, as he occasionally explains to George and to myself, has daughters of his own, or, to speak more correctly, a daughter, who, as the years progress, will no doubt cease practising Catherine wheels in the front garden, and will grow up into a beautiful and respectable young lady. This naturally gives Harris an interest in all beautiful girls up to the age of 35 or thereabouts. They remind him, so he says, of home. We had ridden for about 2 miles when we noticed, a little ahead of us, in a space where 5 ways met, a man with a hose watering the roads. The pipe, supported at each joint by a pair of tiny wheels, writhed after him as he moved, suggesting a giant worm, from whose open neck, as the man, gripping it firmly in both hands, pointing it now this way and now that, now elevating it, now depressing it, poured a strong stream of water at the rate of about 1 gallon a second. "What a much better method than ours," observed Harris enthusiastically. Harris is inclined to be chronically severe on all British institutions. "How much simpler, quicker and more economical. You see, one man by this method can in 5 minutes water a stretch of road that would take us, with our clumsy lumbering cart, half an hour to cover." George, who was riding behind me on the tandem, said, "Yes, and it is also a method by which, with a little carelessness, a man could cover a good many people in a good deal less time than they could get out the way." George, the opposite to Harris, is British to the core. I remember George quite patriotically indignant with Harris for once suggesting the introduction of the guillotine into England. "It is so much neater," said Harris. "I don't care if it is," said George. "I'm an Englishman. Hanging is good enough for me." "Our water cart may have its disadvantages," continued George, "but it can only make you uncomfortable about the legs, and you can avoid it. This is the sort of machine with which a man can follow you round the corner and upstairs." "It fascinates me to watch 'em," said Harris. "They're so skilful. I've seen a man from the corner of a crowded square in Strasbourg cover every inch of ground, and not so much as wet an apron string. It is marvellous how they judge their distance. They'll send the water up to your toes, and then bring it over your head so that it falls around your heels. They can—" "Ease up a minute," said George. I said, "Why?" He said, "I'm going to get off and watch the rest of the show from behind a tree. There may be great performers in this line, as Harris says. This particular artist appears to me to lack something. He has just soused a dog, and now he's busy watering a signpost. I'm going to wait till he is finished." "Nonsense," said Harris. "You won't wait you." "That is precisely what I'm going to make sure of," answered George, saying which he jumped off and, taking up a position behind a remarkably fine elm, pulled out and commenced filling his pipe. I did not care to take the tandem on by myself, so I stepped off and joined him, leaving the machine against a tree. Harris shouted something or other about our being a disgrace to the land that gave us birth, and rode on. The next moment I heard a woman's cry of distress. Glancing round the stem of the tree, I perceived that it proceeded from the young and elegant lady before mentioned, whom, in our interest concerning the road waterer, we had forgotten. She was riding her machine steadily and straightly through a drenching shower of water from the hose. She appeared to be too paralyzed either to get off or turn her wheel aside. Every instant she was becoming wetter, while the man with the hose, who was either drunk or blind, continued to pour water upon her with utter indifference. A dozen voices yelled imprecations upon him, but he took no heed whatever. Meanwhile, Joey yells imprecations behind me, to which I must heed. 1 second. That's the door open quick. Not to worry. All is fine. He is out of the room for 5 minutes. I'll just bonk the mic as I get back into place. Imprecations, that is the word. I did read that right? Now I've lost where I am on the page. Where was I? Yeah. A dozen voices yelled imprecations upon him, but he took no heed whatever. I did, it's a good word. Okay, yeah, sorry. I was like, did I miss part of it? I was afraid. To be honest, I'm only picking up the meaning from context. It's not one I could correctly, like, precisely define. But, you know, it's fun to say. Imprecations. Anyway. Harris, his fatherly nature stirred to its depths, did at this point what? Excuse me, I need to burp. Oh, it's going to be a long one tonight, folks. I'm sorry. Harris, his fatherly nature stirred to its depths, did at this point what, under the circumstances, was quite the right and proper thing to do. Had he acted throughout with the same coolness and judgment he then displayed, he would have emerged from that incident the hero of the hour, instead of, as it happened, riding away followed by insult and threat. Without a moment's hesitation, he spurted at the man, sprang to the ground, and, seizing the hose by the nozzle, attempted to wrest it away. What he ought to have done, what any man retaining his common sense would have done the moment he got his hands upon the thing, was to turn off the tap. Then he might have played football with the man, or battledore and shuttlecock, as he pleased, and the 20 or 30 people who had rushed forward to assist would have only applauded. His idea, however, as he explained to us afterwards, was to take away the hose from the man and, for punishment, turn it upon the fool himself. The waterman's idea appeared to be the same, namely, to retain the hose as a weapon with which to soak Harris. Of course, the result was that, between them, they soused every dead and living thing within 50 yards, except themselves. One furious man, too drenched to care what more happened to him, leapt into the arena and also took a hand. The 3 among them proceeded to sweep the compass with the hose. They pointed it to heaven, and the water descended upon the people in the form of an equinoctial storm. They pointed it downwards, and sent the water in rushing streams that took people off their feet, or caught them about the waistline and doubled them up. Not one of them would loosen his grip upon the hose. Not one of them thought to turn the water off. You might have concluded they were struggling with some primeval force of nature. In 45 seconds, so George said, who was timing it, they had swept that circus bare of every living thing except one dog who, dripping like a water nymph, rolled over by the force of water, now on this side, now on that, still gallantly staggered again and again to its feet, to bark defiance at what it evidently regarded as the powers of hell let loose. Men and women left their machines upon the ground, and flew into the woods. From behind every tree of importance peeped out wet, angry heads. At last there arrived upon the scene one man of sense. Braving all things, he crept to the hydrant, where still stood the iron key, and screwed it down. And then, from 40 trees began to creep more or less soaked human beings, each one with something to say. At first, I fell to wondering whether a stretcher or a clothes basket would be the more useful for the conveyance of Harris's remains back to the hotel. I consider that George's promptness on that occasion saved Harris's life. Being dry, and therefore able to run quicker, he was there before the crowd. Harris was for explaining things, but George cut him short. "You get on that," said George, handing him his bicycle, "and go. They don't know we belong to you, and they may trust us implicitly. And you may trust us implicitly not to reveal the secret. We'll hang about behind and get in their way. Ride zigzag in case they shoot." I wish this book to be a strict record of fact, unmarred by exaggeration, and therefore I have shown my description of this incident to Harris, lest anything beyond bald narrative may have crept into it. Harris maintains it is exaggerated, but admits that 1 or 2 people may have been sprinkled. I have offered to turn a street hose on him at a distance of 25 yards, and take his opinion afterwards as to whether sprinkled is the adequate term, but he has declined the test. Again, he insists there could not have been more than half a dozen people, at the outside, involved in the catastrophe, that 40 is a ridiculous misstatement. I have offered to return with him to Hanover to make strict inquiry into the matter, and this offer he has likewise declined. Under these circumstances, I maintain that mine is a true and restrained narrative of an event that is, by a certain number of Hanoverians, remembered with bitterness unto this very day. We left Hanover that same evening, and arrived at Berlin in time for supper and an evening stroll. Berlin is a disappointing town, its centre overcrowded, its outlying parts lifeless, its one famous street, Unter den Linden, an attempt to combine Oxford Street with the Champs-Élysées, singularly unimposing, being much too wide for its size, its theatres dainty and charming, where acting is considered of more importance than scenery or dress, where long runs are unknown, successful pieces being played again and again, but never consecutively, so that for a week running you might go to the same Berlin theatre and see a fresh play every night, its opera house unworthy of it, its 2 music halls with an unnecessary suggestion of vulgarity and commonness about them, ill-arranged and much too large for comfort. In the Berlin cafes and restaurants, the busy times from midnight until 3, yet most of the people who frequent them are up again at 7. Either the Berliner has solved the great problem of modern life, how to do without sleep, or, with Carlyle, he must be looking forward to eternity. Personally, I know of no other town where such late hours are the vogue, except St. Petersburg. But your St. Petersburger does not get up early in the morning. At St. Petersburg, the music halls, which it is the fashionable thing to attend after the theatre, a drive to them taking half an hour in a swift sleigh, do not practically begin at 12. Through the Neva at 4 o'clock in the morning you have to literally push your way, and the favourite trains for travellers are those starting about 5 o'clock in the morning. These trains save the Russian the trouble of getting up early. He wishes his friends good night, and drives down to the station comfortably after supper without putting the house to any inconvenience. Potsdam, the Versailles to Berlin, is a beautiful little town, situate among lakes and woods. Here, in the shady ways of its quiet, far-reaching park of Sans-Souci, it is easy to imagine lean, snuffy Frederick bummeling with shrill Voltaire. Acting on my advice, George and Harris consented not to stay long in Berlin, but to push on to Dresden. Most that Berlin has to show can be seen better elsewhere, and we decided to be content with a drive through the town. The hotel porter introduced us to a droshky driver, under whose guidance, so he assured us, we should see everything worth seeing in the shortest possible time. The man himself, who called for us at 9 o'clock in the morning, was all that could be desired. He was bright, intelligent, and well-informed. His German was easy to understand, and he knew a little English with which to eke it out on occasion. With the man himself there was no fault to be found, but his horse was the most unsympathetic brute I ever sat behind. He took a dislike to us the moment he saw us. I was the first to come out of the hotel. He turned his head and looked me up and down with a cold, glassy eye, and then he looked across at another horse, a friend of his that was standing facing him. I knew what he said. He had an expressive head, and he made no attempt to disguise his thought. He said, "Funny things one does come across in the summer-time, don't one?" George followed me out the next moment and stood behind me. The horse again turned his head and looked. I have never known a horse that could twist himself as this horse did. I have seen a camel-leopard do tricks with his neck that compelled one's attention, but this animal was more like the thing one dreams of after a dusty day at Ascot, followed by a dinner with 6 old chums. If I had seen his eyes looking at me from between his hind legs, I doubt if I should have been surprised. He seemed more amused with George, if anything, than with myself. He turned to his friend again. "Extraordinary, isn't it?" he remarked. "I suppose there must be some place where they grow them." And then he commenced licking flies off his own left shoulder. I began to wonder whether he had lost his mother when young and he had been brought up by a cat. George and I climbed in and sat waiting for Harris. He came a moment later. Myself, I thought he looked rather neat. He wore a white flannel knickerbocker suit, which he had made specially for bicycling in hot weather. His hat may have been a trifle out of the common, but it did keep the sun off. The horse gave one look at him and said, "Gott in Himmel," as plainly as ever horse spoke, and started off down the Friedrichstrasse at a brisk walk, leaving Harris and the driver standing on the pavement. His owner called to him to stop, but he took no notice. They ran after us and overtook us at the corner of the Dorotheenstrasse. I could not catch what the man said to the horse. He spoke quickly and excitedly, but I gathered a few phrases such as, "Got to earn my living somehow, haven't I? You asked for your opinion. Aye, little you care so long as you can guzzle." The horse cut the conversation short by turning up the Dorotheenstrasse on his own account. I think what he said was, "Come on then, don't talk so much, let's get the job over and where possible let's keep to the back streets." Opposite the Brandenburger Tor, our driver hitched the reins to the whip, climbed down, and came round to explain things to us. He pointed out the Tiergarten, and then descanted to us the Reichstag House. He informed us of its exact height, length, and breadth after the manner of guides. Then he turned his attention to the gate. He said it was constructed of sandstone, in imitation of the Propylaea in Athens. At this point, the horse, which had been occupying its leisure licking its own legs, turned round its head. It did not say anything. It just looked. The man began again nervously. This time he said it was an imitation of the Propylaea. Here the horse proceeded up the Linden, and nothing would persuade him not to proceed up the Linden. His owner expostulated with him, but he continued to trot on. From the way he hitched his shoulders as he moved, I somehow felt he was saying, "They've seen the gate, haven't they? Very well, that's enough. As for the rest, you don't know what you're talking about, and they wouldn't understand you if you did. You talk German." It was the same throughout the length of the Linden. The horse consented to stand still sufficiently long to enable us to have a good look at each sight, and to hear the name of it. All explanation and description he cut short by the simple process of moving on. "What these fellows want," he seemed to say to himself, "is to go home and tell people that they have seen these things. If I am doing them an injustice, if they are more intelligent than they look, they can get better information than this old fool of mine is giving them from the guidebook. Who wants to know how high a steeple is? You don't remember it the next 5 minutes when you are told. And if you do, it's because you have nothing else in your head. He just tires me with his talk. Why doesn't he hurry up and let us all get home to lunch?" Upon reflection, I am not sure that wall-eyed old brute had not sense on its side. Anyhow, I know there have been occasions with a guide when I would have been glad of its interference. But one is apt to sin one's mercies, as the Scottish say, and at the time we cursed that horse instead of blessing it. And that brings us to the end of the chapter, and yeah, I think I'm going to take a 5-minute break there and come back for the next one, chapter 7, and then do the same at the end of that for chapter 8. So, you got 5 minutes, folks. Move around, stretch, cycle your fluids, open a door for a cat, and see you back here in just a bit. Bye for now. hello. Hi. I hope everyone's well and been able to make as much as you can of the break time allotted. I don't know. I for myself did not. I rocked back in my chair and stretched my arms a little bit. That's it. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I'm barely with it. Probably been a bit of a trend this week. I think I've been watching Loading Ready Run's doing a subathon this week, like a capped one that ends tonight. And I've spent far too much time staying up late this week watching that, which has been a mistake. Bet the chair didn't make horrible noises. No, check this out. Check this out. Yeah. Not a sound. I mean, it makes noises if I move on it because it's like a leathery finish. But I can just all the way back. It's on, like, in that first bit I was kind of tempted just to like kick back, put my feet up on the desk. I could do that for chapter 8. I feel like I should remain sitting for, the next one though. Just try and keep some small air of professionalism. But I do feel like my voice is kind of husky this evening. Just I'm not even gonna bother you. Make the jokes in chat. Go on. Something, owl, sled dog, whatever. Yeah, okay. But it's, I don't know. It just feels sort of constricted. I don't know why. I haven't done anything. I've been drinking water. Yes, I've been drinking water. I sound lovely. Thank you. Wasn't fishing for it. It just, it doesn't quite feel like it's coming from exactly the usual place. I don't know. Back on Cat Talk, Joey, as a long-haired cat, has not been enjoying this summer and has been molting a huge amount, and that fur has been like matting and like knotting on his sides, and we discussed this before. He will not let me do anything to deal with it, so he's been dealing it with himself. All of which is to say, there is, even for him, even for this type of, this kind of, time of year, that's the word, there is a truly unreasonable, like, biblical amount of cat hair distributed everywhere, a significant portion of it ending up on and in my face multiple times throughout the course of a day and night. So even like for me, if it's not coming across on the mic, good, I guess. But even for me, like I feel just a little bit more sniffly maybe, and so I suspect it's probably due to that. It's like I'm like, cat allergies for me tend to be fine up until the point at which cat hair gets into my face, and that I don't have it. He is hacking up enormous hairballs most days this week. There's a lot. Like I'm generally fine with like cat hair and fur and stuff until it gets in my face, and then I'm having a bad time. So maybe there's a bit of that going on. But if we don't start chapter 7, we'll never get to chapter 8. And also I'm getting desperately close to accidentally pressing buttons on my keyboard that, like, I don't think they're set up as shortcuts, but they might be. So let's get chapter 7. It's the same link every time, but this is just so anyone coming in can like see where we're at. Right, should we carry on? Should we read chapter 7? If we're ready, let's do that. Let's have chapter 7. This is 3 Men on the Bummel by Jerome K. Jerome. Chapter 7. George wonders. German love of order. The band of the Schwarzwald Blackbirds will perform at 7. The China Dog. Its superiority over all other dogs. The German and the solar system. A tidy country. The mountain valley as it ought to be, according to the German idea. How the waters come down in Germany. The scandal of Dresden. Paris gives an entertainment. It is unappreciated. George and the aunt of him. George, a cushion, and 3 damsels. At a point between Berlin and Dresden, George, who had for the last quarter of an hour or so been looking very attentively out of the window, said, "Why, in Germany, is it the custom to put a letterbox up a tree? Why do they not fix it to the front door as we do? I should hate having to climb up a tree to get my letters. Besides, it is not fair to the postman. In addition to being most exhausting, the delivery of letters must, to a heavy man on windy nights, be positively dangerous work. If they will fix it to a tree, why not fix it lower down? Why always among the topmost branches? But maybe I'm misjudging the country," he continued, a new idea occurring to him. "Possibly the Germans, who are in many matters ahead of us, have perfected a pigeon post. Even so, I cannot help thinking they would have been wiser to train the birds while they were about it to deliver the letters nearer the ground. Getting your letters out of those boxes must be tricky work, even to the average middle-aged German." I followed his gaze out of the window. I said, "Those are not letterboxes. They are birds' nests. You must understand this nation. The German loves birds, but he likes tidy birds. A bird left to himself builds his nest just anywhere. It is not a pretty object, according to the German notion of prettiness. There is not a bit of paint on it anywhere, not a plaster image all around, not even a flag. The nest finished, the bird proceeds to live outside it. He drops things on the grass, twigs, ends of worms, all sorts of things. He is indelicate. He makes love, quarrels with his wife, and feeds the children quite in public. The German householder is shocked. He says to the bird, 'For many things I like you. I like to look at you. I like to hear you sing, but I don't like your ways. Take this little box and put your rubbish inside where I can't see it. Come out when you want to sing, but let your domestic arrangements be confined to the interior. Keep to the box, and don't make the garden untidy.'" In Germany, one breathes in love of order with the air. In Germany, the babies beat time with their rattles, and the German bird has come to prefer the box, and to regard with contempt the few uncivilized outcasts who continue to build their nests in trees and hedges. Of course, in course of time, every German bird, one is confident, will have his proper place in a full chorus. This promiscuous and desultory warbling of his must, one feels, be irritating to the precise German mind. There is no method in it. The music-loving German will organize him. Some stout bird with a specially well-developed crop will be trained to conduct him, and, instead of wasting himself in a wood at 4 o'clock in the morning, he will, at the advertised time, sing in a beer garden, accompanied by a piano. Things are drifting that way. Your German likes nature, but his idea of nature is a glorified Welsh harp. He takes great interest in his garden. He plants 7 rose trees on the north side and 7 on the south, and if they do not grow up all the same size and shape, it worries him so that he cannot sleep at nights. Every flower he ties to a stick. This interferes with his view of the flower, but he has the satisfaction of knowing it is there, and that it is behaving itself. The lake is lined with zinc, and once a week he takes it up, carries it into the kitchen, and scours it. In the geometrical centre of the grass plot, which is sometimes as large as a tablecloth, it is generally railed around. He places a china dog. The Germans are very fond of dogs, but, as a rule, they prefer them of china. The china dog never digs holes in the lawn to bury bones, and never scatters a flower bed to the winds with his hind legs. From the German point of view, he is the ideal dog. He stops where you put him, and he is never where you do not want him. You can have him perfect in all points, according to the latest requirements of the Kennel Club, or you can indulge your own fancy and have something unique. You are not, as with other dogs, limited to breed. In China, you can have a blue dog or a pink dog. For a little extra, you can have a double-headed dog. On a certain fixed date in the autumn, the German stakes his flowers and bushes to the earth and covers them with Chinese matting, and on a certain fixed date in the spring he uncovers them and stands them up again. If it happens to be an exceptionally fine autumn, or an exceptionally late spring, so much the worse for the unfortunate vegetable. No true German would allow his arrangements to be interfered with by so unruly a thing as the solar system. Unable to regulate the weather, he ignores it. Among trees, your German's favourite is the poplar. Other disorderly nations may sing the charms of the rugged oak, the spreading chestnut, or the waving elm. To the German, all such, with their wilful, untidy ways, are eyesores. The poplar grows where it is planted, and how it is planted. It has no improper rugged ideas of its own. It does not want to wave or to spread itself. It just grows straight and upright, as a German tree should grow, and so gradually the German is rooting out all other trees and replacing them with poplars. Your German likes the country, but he prefers it as the lady thought she would the noble savage, more dressed. He likes his walk through the wood, to a restaurant, but the pathway must not be too steep. It must have a brick gutter running down one side of it to drain it, and every 20 yards or so it must have its seat on which he can rest and mop his brow. For your German would no more think of sitting on the grass than would an English bishop dream of rolling down One Tree Hill. He likes his view from the summit of the hill, but he likes to find there a stone tablet telling him what to look at, and a table and bench at which he can sit to partake of the frugal beer and belegte semmel he has been careful to bring with him. If, in addition, he can find a police notice posted on a tree forbidding him to do something or other, that gives him an extra sense of comfort and security. Your German is not averse even to wild scenery, provided it be not too wild. But if he consider it too savage, he sets to work to tame it. I remember, in the neighbourhood of Dresden, discovering a picturesque and narrow valley leading down towards the Elbe. The winding roadway ran beside a mountain torrent, which for a mile or so fretted and foamed over rocks and boulders between wood-covered banks. I followed it, enchanted, until, turning a corner, I suddenly came across a gang of 80 or 100 workmen. They were busy tidying up that valley and making that stream respectable. All the stones that were impeding the course of the water they were carefully picking out and carting away. The bank, on either side, they were bricking up and cementing. The overhanging tree and bushes, the tangled vines and creepers they were rooting up and trimming down. A little farther, I came upon the finished work. The mountain valley as it ought to be, according to German ideas. The water, now a broad, sluggish stream, flowed over a level, gravelly bed between two walls, crowned with stone coping. At every 100 yards, it gently descended down 3 shallow wooden platforms. For a space on either side the ground had been cleared, and at regular intervals young poplars planted. Each sapling was protected by a shield of wickerwork and bossed by an iron rod. In the course of a couple of years it is the hope that the local council to have finished that valley throughout its entire length, and made it fit for a tidy-minded lover of German nature to walk in. There will be a seat every 50 yards, a police notice every 100, and a restaurant every half-mile. They are doing the same, from the Bummel to the Rhine. They are just tidying up the country. I remember well the Werthal. It was once the most romantic ravine to be found in the Black Forest. The last time I walked down it, some hundreds of Italian workmen were encamped there, hard at work, training the little Wehr the way it should go, bricking the banks through it here, blasting the rocks for it there, making cement steps for it down which it can travel soberly and without fuss. For in Germany there is no nonsense talked about untrammelled nature. In Germany, nature has got to behave itself and not set a bad example to the children. A German poet, noticing waters coming down, as Southey describes, somewhat inexactly, the waters coming down at Lodore, would be too shocked to stop and write alliterative verse about them. He would hurry away, and at once report them to the police. Then their foaming and their shrieking would be of short duration. Now then, what's all this about?" the voice of German authority would say severely to the waters. "We can't have this sort of thing, you know. Come down quietly, can't you? Where do you think you are?" And the local German council would provide those waters with zinc pipes and wooden troughs and a corkscrew staircase, and show them how to come down sensibly in the German manner. It is a tidy land, is Germany. We reached Dresden on the Wednesday evening and stayed there over the Sunday. Taking one consideration with another, Dresden, perhaps, is the most attractive town in Germany, but it is a place to be lived in for a while rather than visited. Its museums and galleries, its palaces and gardens, its beautiful and historically rich environment provide pleasure for a winter, but bewilder for a week. It has not the gaiety of Paris or Vienna, which quickly palls. Its charms are more solidly German and more lasting. It is the Mecca of the musician. For 5 shillings in Dresden you can purchase a stall at the opera house, together, unfortunately, with the strong disinclination ever again to take the trouble of sitting out a performance in any English, French, or American opera house. The chief scandal of Dresden still centres around August the Strong, the man of sin, as Carlyle always called him, who is popularly reputed to have cursed Europe with over 1,000 children. Castles where he imprisoned this discarded mistress or that, one of them who persisted in her claim to a better title for 40 years, it is said, poor lady. The narrow rooms where she ate her heart out and died are still shown. Chateaux, shameful for this deed of infamy or that, lie scattered round the neighbourhood like bones about a battlefield, and most of your guide's stories are such as the young person educated in Germany had best not hear. His life-sized portrait hangs in the fine Zwinger, which he built as an arena for his wild beast fights, when the people grew tired of them in the marketplace. A beetle-browed, frankly animal man, but with the culture and taste that so often wait upon animalism. Modern Dresden undoubtedly owes much to him. But what the stranger in Dresden stares at most is, perhaps, its electric trams. These huge vehicles flash through the streets at from 10 to 20 miles an hour, taking curves and corners after the manner of a London car driver. Everybody travels by them, excepting only officers in uniform who must not. Ladies in evening dress, going to ball or opera, porters with their baskets, sit side by side. They are all important in the streets, and everything and everybody makes haste to get out of their way. If you do not get out of their way, you still happen to be alive when picked up, then on your recovery you are fined for having been in their way. This teaches you to be wary of them. One afternoon, Harris took a Bummel by himself. In the evening, we sat listening to the band at the Belvedere. Harris said, apropos of nothing in particular, "These Germans have no sense of humour." "What makes you think that?" I asked. "Why, this afternoon," he answered, "I jumped on one of those electric tramcars. I wanted to see the town, so I stood outside on the little platform. What do you call it?" "The Stehplatz," I suggested. "That's it," said Harris. "Well, you know the way they shake you about, and how you have to look out for the corners and mind yourself when they stop and when they start?" I nodded. "There were about 6 of us standing there," he continued, "and of course I'm not experienced. The thing started suddenly and jerked me backwards. I fell against a stout gentleman just behind me. He could not have been standing very firmly himself, and he, in turn, fell back against a boy who was carrying a trumpet in a green baize case. They never smiled, neither the man nor the boy with the trumpet. They just stood there and looked sulky. I was going to say I was sorry, but before I could get the words out, the tram eased up, for some reason or other, and that, of course, shot me forward again, and I butted into a white-haired old chap, who looks to me like a professor. Well, he never smiled, never moved a muscle. Maybe he was thinking of something else, I suggested. That could not have been the case with them all, replied Harris, and in the course of that journey I must have fallen against every one of them at least 3 times. You see, explained Harris, they knew when the corners were coming, and in which direction to brace themselves. I, as a stranger, was naturally at a disadvantage. The way I rolled and staggered about that platform, clutching wildly now at this man and now at that, must have been really comic. I don't say it was high-class humour, but it would have amused most people. Those Germans seemed to see no fun in it whatever. Just seemed anxious, that was all. There was one man, a little man, who stood with his back against the brake. Fell against him 5 times. I counted them. You would have expected the 5th time would have dragged a laugh out of him, but it didn't. He merely looked tired. They are a dull lot. George also had an adventure at Dresden. There was a shop near the Altmarket, in the window of which were exhibited some cushions for sale. The proper business of the shop was handling of glass and china. The cushions appeared to be in the nature of an experiment. They were very beautiful cushions, hand-embroidered on satin. We often passed the shop, and every time George paused and examined those cushions, he said he thought his aunt would like one. George has been very attentive to this aunt of his during the journey. He has written her quite a long letter every day, and from every town we stop at he sends her off a present. To my mind, he is overdoing the business, and more than once I have expostulated with him. His aunt will be meeting other aunts and talking to them. The whole class will become disorganized and unruly. As a nephew, I object to the impossible standard that George is setting up, but he will not listen. Therefore, it was that on the Saturday he left us after lunch, saying he would go round to that shop and get one of those cushions for his aunt. He said he would not be long, and suggested our waiting for him. We waited for what seemed to me rather a long time. When he rejoined us, he was empty-handed, and looked worried. We asked him where his cushion was. He said he hadn't got a cushion, said he had changed his mind, said he didn't think his aunt would care for a cushion. Evidently something was amiss. We tried to get at the bottom of it, but he was not communicative. Indeed, his answers, after our 20th question or thereabouts, became quite short. In the evening, however, when he and I happened to be alone, he broached the subject himself. He said, "They are somewhat peculiar in some things, these Germans." I said, "What has happened?" "Well," he answered, "there was that cushion I wanted." "For your aunt?" I remarked. "Why not?" he returned. He was huffy in a moment. I never knew a man so touchy about an aunt. "Why shouldn't I send a cushion to my aunt?" "Don't get excited," I replied. "I'm not objecting. I respect you for it." He recovered his temper and went on. "There were 4 in the window, if you remember, all very much alike, and each one labelled in plain figures 20 marks. I don't pretend to speak German fluently, but I can generally make myself understood with a little effort, and gather the sense of what is said to me, provided they don't gabble. I went into the shop. A young girl came up to me. She was pretty, quiet little soul, one might almost say demure. Not at all the sort of girl from whom you would have expected such a thing. I was never more surprised in all my life." "Surprised about what?" I said. "George always assumes you know the end of the story while he is telling you the beginning. It is an annoying method." "What happened?" replied George. "What I am telling you." She smiled and asked me what I wanted. I understood that all right. There could have been no mistake about that. I put down a 20-mark piece on the counter and said, "Please give me a cushion." She stared at me as if I had asked for a feather bed. I thought maybe she had not heard, so I repeated it louder. If I had chucked her under the chin, she could have no. If I had chucked her under the chin, she could not have looked more surprised or indignant. She said she thought I must be making a mistake. I did not want to begin a long conversation and find myself stranded. I said there was no mistake, pointed to my 20-mark piece, and repeated for the third time that I wanted a cushion, a 20-mark cushion. Another girl came up, an elder girl, and the first girl repeated to her what I had just said. She seemed quite excited about it. The second girl did not believe her, did not think I looked the sort of man who would want a cushion. To make sure, she put the question to me herself. "Did you say you wanted a cushion?" she asked. "I've said it 3 times. I answered. "I will say it again. I want a cushion." She said, "Then you can't have one." I was getting angry by this time. If I hadn't really wanted the thing, I should have walked out of the shop. But there the cushions were in the window, evidently for sale. I didn't see why I couldn't have one. I said, "I will have one." It's a simple sentence. I said it with determination. The third girl came up at this point, the 3 representing, I fancy, the whole force of the shop. She was a bright-eyed, saucy-looking little wench, this last one. On any other occasion I might have been pleased to see her. Now her coming only irritated me. I didn't see the need of 3 girls for this business. The first 2 girls started explaining the thing to the third girl, and before they were halfway through, the girl began to giggle. She was the sort of girl who would giggle at anything. That done, they fell to chattering like Jenny Wrens, all 3 together, and between every half-dozen words they looked across at me. And the more they looked at me, the more the third girl giggled, and before they had finished, they were all 3 giggling, the little idiots. You might have thought I was a clown giving a private performance. When she was steady enough to move, the third girl came up to me. She was still giggling. She said, "If you get it, will you go?" I did not quite understand her at first, and she repeated it. "This cushion. When you've got it, will you go? Away. At once?" I was only too anxious to go. I told her so, but I added I was not going without it. I had made up my mind to have that cushion now if I stopped in the shop all night for it. She rejoined the other 2 girls. I thought they were going to get me the cushion and have done with the business. Instead of that, the strangest thing possible happened. The 2 other girls got behind the first girl, all 3 giggling, heaven knows what about, and they pushed her towards me. They pushed her close up to me, and then, before I knew what was happening, she put her hands on my shoulders, stood up on tiptoe and kissed me. After which, burying her face in her apron, she ran off, followed by the second girl. The third girl opened the door for me and so evidently expected me to go, that in my confusion I went, leaving my 20 marks behind me. I don't say I minded the kiss, though I did not particularly want it, while I did want that cushion. I don't like to go back to the shop. I cannot understand a thing at all. I said, "What did you ask for?" He said, "A cushion." I said, "That is what you wanted, I know. What I mean is, what was the actual German word you said?" He replied, "A Kuss." I said, "You have nothing to complain of. It is somewhat confusing. A Kuss sounds as if it ought to be a cushion, but it is not. It is a kiss, while a Kissen is a cushion. You muddled up the 2 words. People have done it before. I don't know much about this sort of thing myself, but you asked for a 20-mark kiss, and from your description of the girl, some people might consider the price reasonable. Anyhow, I should not tell Harris. If I remember rightly, he also has an aunt." George agreed with me it would be better not. And that brings us to the end of that chapter. And yeah, again, I think actually splitting this up into 3 and taking another break is nice. So I'm going to do that. On that bombshell of a misunderstanding, the fast continues, and yeah, we're going to take another break to have another 5 minutes. Do what you feel like with that time, and I'll see you back here in a bit. Bye for now. We are back. Hello. Hi, welcome back. And, you know, it's fun to see that apparently the most disagreeable part of, of what's been read so far is opinions of poplar trees, which, you know, I am no arborist. So I couldn't tell you it was a good tree or not, but apparently, yeah. It does, like, as a chapter that is, it's not like dunking on Germans as such, but sort of leaning heavily into sort of stereotypes of a nation of people, and like really kind of leaning quite hard into that, and like everything is like ordered and organized and formalized, and destroying the wild untamedness of nature so that they can funnel it down into like neat and orderly waterfalls, and you know, and stuff like that. It's a little uncomfortable. There's to me it feels like it is written in a sort of a good-natured spirit, not to be like just mean about people, but more just to kind of in a hyperbolic way point out like differences, idiosyncrasies, I suppose, and you know, to sort of make light of different sort of characteristics, but you know, it's difficult to gauge whenabouts that. If you think in that description you must be German. Well, yeah, I also figure there's going to be, I'm trying to think who like amongst the regulars has or is German or has familiarity with. I was kind of hoping that someone actually, frankly, who's spent a bit more time in modern Germany could look at that and go, yeah, frankly, or not really anymore. But also, yeah, this was, frankly, had the realization that this was published like, well, written, published like, you know, just about a decade before World War One. So it's frankly, it's sad. It's just kind of sad to me hearing him talk about all these places and names that a lot of which are familiar to me because of studying that period of history in school for the sad fame that would befall it in years to come. After this was written, it's, yeah. You have a lot of German heritage, but never been to Germany, so you can't say either way. Yeah. You travel with Germans, you're the longest pony tour. The description of the behaviour seems pretty correct. Yeah, like go into like, oh, these are the jokes we make about other nationalities. Like, yeah, that's not cool. They're like in Britain, if you've watched any kind of sort of stand-up hack comedy show, certainly during the 90s, there was always, you know, sorry, Germany, always, you know, someone making jokes about German precision, German organization and stuff. So that kind of, I feel like that joke has frankly lasted over 100 years. You have a lot of German heritage yourself, maybe that explains it. Yeah, maybe, yeah. But yeah, compared to modern German stereotype-based humans, it's very tame. Exactly, and that's, again, it feels like it's more, he's both kind of making fun of it and the British as well, like the whole bit about, frankly, where he's kind of hyping up, the English language is so good and it's very easy to learn. Why? Because it has no grammar. There's a self-effacement there as well. But yeah, I don't know, there's always just a part of my brain that's like, yeah, I don't go too far with this. Anyway, Joey wishes to come in. Oh. You like the description of English? Yeah, like I enjoyed that. Also, someone reminded me afterwards, because he was talking about pigeons. Well, not pigeons, but birds, like bird boxes and things. I need to find... Jason Pargin has at least one great TikTok video where he's just taken the piss out of pigeons and the awful nests they attempt to build. No, it's not cuddle time. It's really not. Sorry. does not mean that you are a bad cat. I have stopped loving you. Means busy. You're a lot more comfortable with it as long as he's taking everyone else down equally. Yeah, and I feel like I feel like that is the spirit in which it's done. It's not. It doesn't feel like it's coming from a place of, and that's why they're bad and we're good. He's just sort of pointing at everyone's foibles. Yeah, that said, this is coming up. Chapter 8 is the one that has the little bit talking about like the Jewish district of Prague, where I was like, again, whenever that subject comes up, it's especially for the era in which this was written, I always have to kind of lean in and do at least one extra detailed read just to be like, we're not being anti-Semitic, are we? We're not doing anything to like just be gross about stereotypes and things like that, please. And it didn't read that, please, Joey. It didn't read that way to me on my first go through, so I feel like it's probably okay for me to read. If something suddenly like clicks into focus as I'm reading this time and like, oh wait, no, that's gross, I will probably stop and skip on. And likewise, if there's something that I'm just missing, something that I'm just not seeing, and someone else hears it and goes, yo, that's not cool, then feel free to let me know. Because yeah, I don't want to like give anything like that an endorsement. Yeah, meanwhile, Joey is going to sit behind me howling for attention, doing as best he can to distract. As we continue. Oh, no, I need to... It's the same link, but I'm just going to change it to Chapter 8, so that, again, if anyone shows up, you can see where we're at. No. No, Joey. Please don't. My concentration is thin and brittle enough as it is. Like, for real. Bit of stroke in. Oh, that's that when the ball comes up. Because you're going to bite me. I don't actually. Go. And read you like. You are obvious. Right. If we are ready, he is going to cause as much disruption as he can, but if we don't start, we're never going to finish. So, let us continue with the last part for tonight. Not the end of the book, we've still got more book to go, but the last part for tonight. Thank you. Of Three Men on the Bummel by Jerome K. Jerome. Chapter 8. Mr. and Miss Jones of Manchester. The benefits of cocoa. A hint to the Peace Society. The window as a medieval argument. The favourite Christian recreation. The language of the guide. How to repair the ravages of time. George tries a bottle. The fate of the German beer drinker. Harris and I resolve to do a good action. The usual sort of statue. Harris and his friends. A pepperless paradise. Women and towns. We were on our way to Prague, and were waiting in the great hall of the Dresden station until such a time as the powers that be should permit us on to the platform. George, who had wandered to the bookstall, returns to us with a wild look in his eyes. He said, "I've seen it." I said, "Seen what?" "Have you also seen it?" Okay. He was too excited to answer intelligently. He said, "It's here. It's coming this way, both of them. If you wait, you'll see it for yourselves. I'm not joking, it's the real thing." As is usual about this period, some paragraphs, more or less serious, had been appearing in the papers concerning the sea serpent, and I thought for the moment he must be referring to this. A moment's reflection, however, told me that here, in the middle of Europe, 300 miles from the coast, such a thing was impossible. Before I could question him further, he seized me by the arm. "Look," he said, "now am I exaggerating?" I turned my head and saw what, I suppose, few living Englishmen have ever seen before. The travelling Britisher, according to the continental idea, accompanied by his daughter. They were coming towards us in the flesh and blood, unless we were dreaming, alive and concrete. The English milor and the English mise, as for generations they have been portrayed in the continental comic press and upon the continental stage. They were perfect in every detail. The man was tall and thin, with sandy hair, a huge nose, and long Dundreary whiskers. Over a pepper and salt suit he wore a light overcoat, reaching almost to his heels. His white helmet was ornamented with a green veil. A pair of opera glasses hung at his side, and in his lavender-gloved hand he carried an alpenstock a little taller than himself. Joey wants to go back out. You're going for it this evening, aren't you? Excuse me. Well, that just clattered the mic with my knee. That might have been loud. I apologise. His daughter was long and angular. Her dress I cannot describe. My grandfather, poor gentleman, might have been able to do so. It would have been more familiar to him. I can only say that it appeared to me unnecessarily short, exhibiting a pair of ankles, if I may be permitted to refer to such points, that, from an artistic point of view, called rather for concealment. Her hat made me think of Mrs. Hemans, but why I cannot explain. She wore side-spring boots, prunella, I believe, used to be the trade name, mittens and pince-nez. She also carried an alpenstock. There is not a mountain within 100 miles of Dresden, and a black bag strapped to her waist. Her teeth stuck out like a rabbit's, and her figure was that of a bolster on stilts. Harris rushed for his camera, and of course could not find it. He never can when he wants it. Whenever we see Harris scuttling up and down like a lost dog, shouting, "Where's my camera? What the dickens have I done with my camera? Don't either of you remember where I put my camera?" then we know that for the first time that day he has come across something worth photographing. Later on, he remembered it was in his bag. This is where it would be on an occasion like this. They were not content with appearance. They acted the thing to the letter. They walked gaping round them at every step. The gentleman had an open Baedeker in his hand, and the lady carried a phrase-book. They talked French that nobody could understand, and German that they could not translate themselves. The man poked at officials with his alpenstock to attract their attention, and the lady, her eye catching sight of an advertisement of somebody's cocoa, said, "Shocking!" and turned the other way. Really, there was some excuse for her. One notices, even in England, the home of proprieties, that the lady who drinks cocoa appears, according to the poster, to require very little else in the world. A yard or so of art muslin at the most. On the continent, she dispenses, so far as one can judge, with every other necessity of life. Not only is cocoa food and drink to her, it should be clothes also, according to the idea of the cocoa manufacturer. But this, by the way. Of course, they immediately became the centre of attraction. By being able to render them some slight assistance, I gained the advantage of 5 minutes' conversation with them. They were very affable. The gentleman told me his name was Jones, and that he came from Manchester, but he did not seem to know what part of Manchester, or where Manchester was. I asked him where he was going to, but he evidently did not know. He said it depended. I asked him if he did not find an alpenstock a clumsy thing to walk about with through a crowded town. He admitted that occasionally it did get in the way. I asked him if he did not find a veil interfere with his view of things. He explained that you only wore it when the flies became troublesome. I inquired of the lady if she did not find the wind blow cold. She said she had noticed it, especially at the corners. I did not ask these questions one after another, as I have here put them down. I mixed them up with general conversation, and we parted on good terms. I have pondered much upon the apparition, and have come to a definite opinion. I met a man, later, at Frankfurt, and to whom I described the pair, said he had seen them himself, in Paris, 3 weeks after the termination of the Fashoda incident, while a traveller for some English steelworks whom we met in Strasbourg remembered having seen them in Berlin during the excitement caused by the Transvaal question. My conclusion is that they were actors, out of work, hired to do this thing in the interest of international peace. The French Foreign Office wished to allay the anger of the Parisian mob clamouring for war with England, secured this admirable couple and sent them around the town. You cannot be amused at a thing and at the same time want to kill it. The French nation saw the English citizen and citizeness, no caricature, but the living reality, and their indignation exploded into laughter. The success of the stratagem prompted them later on to offer their services to the German government, with the beneficial results that we all know. Our own government might learn the lesson. It might be as well to keep near Downing Street a few small, fat Frenchmen to be sent round the country when occasion called for it, shrugging their shoulders and eating frog sandwiches. Or a file of untidy, lank-haired Germans might be retained to walk about, smoking long pipes, saying, "So." The public would laugh and exclaim, "War with such? It would be too absurd." Failing the government, I recommend the scheme to the Peace Society. Our visit to Prague we were compelled to lengthen somewhat. Prague is one of the most interesting towns in Europe. Its stones are saturated with history and romance. Its every suburb must have been a battlefield. It is the town that conceived the Reformation and hatched the 30 Years' War. But half Prague's troubles, one imagines, might have been saved to it had it possessed windows less large and temptingly convenient. The first of these mighty catastrophes it set rolling by throwing the 7 Catholic councillors from the windows of its Rathaus onto the pikes of the Hussites below. Later, it gave the signal for the second by throwing the imperial councillors from the windows of the old burg in the Hradčin, Prague's second Fenesturz. Since other fateful questions have been decided in Prague, one assumes from their having been concluded without violence that such must have been discussed in cellars. The window, as an argument, one feels, would always have provided too strong a temptation to any true-born Prager. In the Teinkirch stands the worm-eaten pulpit from which preached John Huss. One may hear from the self-same desk today the voice of a papist priest, while in far-off Constance a rude block of stone, half ivy-hidden, marks the spot where Huss and Jerome died burning at the stake. History is fond of her little ironies. In this same Teinkirch lies buried Tycho Brahe, the astronomer who made the common mistake of thinking the earth, with its 1100 creeds and one humanity, the centre of the universe, but who otherwise observed the stars clearly. Through Prague's dirty, palace-bordered alleys we have pressed, often in hot haste, blind Ziska, an open-minded Wallenstein. They have dubbed him the hero in Prague, and the town is honestly proud of having owned him for citizen. In his gloomy palace in the Waldsteinplatz, they show as a sacred spot the cabinet where he prayed, and seem to have persuaded themselves he really had a soul. Its steep, winding ways must have been choked a dozen times, now by Sigismund's flying legions, followed by fierce killing Taborites, and now by pale Protestants pursued by the victorious Catholics of Maximilian. now Saxons, now Bavarians, and now French, now the saints of Gustavus Adolphus, and now the steel fighting machines of Frederick the Great, have thundered at its gates and fought upon its bridges. The Jews have always been an important feature of Prague. Occasionally they have assisted the Christians in their favourite occupation of slaughtering one another, and the great flag suspended from the vaulting of the Altneuschule testifies to the courage with which they helped Catholic Ferdinand to resist the Protestant Swedes. The Prague ghetto was one of the first to be established in Europe, and in the tiny synagogue, still standing, the Jew of Prague has worshipped for 800 years, his womenfolk devoutly listening without at the ear holes provided for them in the massive walls. A Jewish cemetery adjacent, Bechhajim, or the House of Life, seems as though it were bursting with its dead. Within its narrow acre it was the law of centuries that here or nowhere must the bones of Israel rest. So the worn and broken tombstones lie piled up in close confusion, as though tossed and tumbled by the struggling host beneath. The ghetto walls have long been levelled, but the living Jews of Prague still cling to their fetid lanes, though these are being rapidly replaced by fine new streets that promise to eventually transform this quarter into the handsomest part of the town. At Dresden, they advised us not to talk German in Prague. For years, racial animosity between the German minority and the Czech majority has raged throughout Bohemia, and to be mistaken for a German in certain streets of Prague is inconvenient to a man whose staying powers in a race are not what they once were. However, we did talk German in certain streets in Prague. It was a case of talking German or nothing. The Czech dialect is said to be of great antiquity and of highly scientific cultivation. Its alphabet contains 42 letters, suggestive to a stranger of Chinese. It is not a language to be picked up in a hurry. We decided that on the whole there would be less risk to our constitution in keeping to German, and as a matter of fact no harm came to us. The explanation I can only surmise. The Prager is an exceedingly acute person. Some subtle falsity of accent, some slight grammatical inaccuracy may have crept into our German, revealing to him the fact that, in spite of all appearances to the contrary, we were no true-born Deutsche. I do not assert this. I put it forward as a possibility. To avoid unnecessary danger, however, we did our sightseeing with the aid of a guide. No guide I have ever come across is perfect. Actually, I will just stop there for a second. Welcome in, Raiders. Usually we don't take a break off from reading because, saying in the flow, but thank you for raiding in. Welcome in, Mermaid Jeans. I know that name. I know you from Steven Streams. Welcome in. Thank you for coming over. I'll carry on reading, but, yeah. Welcome to this. That's super kind of you. Lovely to see you. Yes. To avoid unnecessary danger, however, we did our sightseeing with the aid of a guide. No guide I have ever come across is perfect. This one had two distinct failings. His English was decidedly weak. Indeed, it was not English at all. I do not know what you would call it. It was not altogether his fault. He had learnt English from a Scottish lady. I understand Scottish fairly well. To keep abreast of modern English literature this is necessary, but to understand broad Scottish talked with a Slavonic accent, occasionally relieved by German modifications, taxes the intelligence. For the first hour it was difficult to rid oneself of the conviction that the man was choking. Every moment we expected him to die on our hands. In the course of the morning we grew accustomed to him and rid ourselves of the instinct to throw him on his back every time he opened his mouth and tear his clothes from him. Later we came to understand a part of what he said, and this led to the discovery of his second failing. It would seem he had lately invented a hair restorer which he had persuaded a local chemist to take up and advertise. Half this time he had been pointing out to us not the beauties of Prague, but the benefits likely to accrue to the human race from the use of this concoction, and the conventional agreement with which, under the impression he was waxing eloquent concerning views and architecture, We had met his enthusiasm he had attributed to sympathetic interest in this wretched wash of his. The result was that now there was no keeping him away from the subject. Ruined places and crumbling churches he dismissed with curt reference as mere frivolities, encouraging a morbid taste for the decadent. His duty, as he saw it, was not to lead us to dwell upon the ravages of time, but rather to direct our attention to the means of repairing them. What had we to do with broken-headed heroes or bald-headed saints? Our interest should be surely in the living world, in the maidens with their flowing tresses, or the flowing tresses they might have by judicious use of Kopfkeur in the young men with their fierce moustaches, as pictured on the label. Unconsciously, in his own mind, he had divided the world into two sections. The past, before use, a sickly, disagreeable-looking, uninteresting world. The future, after use, a fat, jolly, God-bless-everybody sort of world. And this unfitted him as a guide to scenes of medieval history. He sent us each a bottle of the stuff to our hotel. It appeared that in the early part of our converse with him we had, unwittingly, clamoured for it. Personally, I can neither praise it nor condemn it. A long series of disappointments has disheartened me, added to which a permanent atmosphere of paraffin, however faint, is apt to cause remark, especially in the case of a married man. Now I never try even the sample. I gave my bottle to George. He asked for it to send to a man he knew in Leeds. I learnt later that Harris had given him his bottle also, to send to the same man. A suggestion of onions has clung to this tour since we left Prague. George has noticed it himself. He attributes it to the prevalence of garlic in European cooking. It was in Prague that Harris and I did a kind and friendly thing to George. We had noticed for some time past that George was getting too fond of Pilsner beer. This German beer is an insidious drink, especially in hot weather, but it does not do to imbibe too freely of it. It does not get into your head, but after a time it spoils your waist. I always say to myself on entering Germany, now I will drink no German beer, the white wine of the country with a little soda water, perhaps occasionally a glass of Ems or potash, but beer, never. Or, at all events, hardly ever. It is a good and useful resolution which I recommend to all travellers. I only wish I could keep to it myself. George, although I urged him, refused to bind himself by any such hard and fast limit. He said that in moderation German beer was good. 1 glass in the morning, said George. 1 in the evening, or even 2. That would do no harm to anyone. Maybe he was right. It was his half-dozen glasses that troubled Harris and myself. It's hereditary, so is it... Sorry. It's hereditary, so he has explained to me, I answered. It seems his family have always been thirsty. There is Apollinaris water, replied Harris, which, I believe, with a little lemon squeezed into it, is practically harmless. What I'm thinking about is his figure. He will lose all his natural elegance. We talked the matter over, and, Providence aiding us, we fixed upon a plan. For the ornamentation of the town, a new statue had just been cast. I forget of whom it was a statue. I only remember that in the essentials it was the usual sort of street statue, representing the usual sort of gentleman, with the usual stiff neck, riding the usual sort of horse, the horse that always walks on its hind legs, keeping its front paws for beating time. But in detail it possessed individuality. Instead of the usual sword or baton, the man was holding, stretched out in his hand, his own plumed hat, and the horse, instead of the usual waterfall for a tail, possessed a somewhat attenuated appendage that somehow appeared out of keeping with his ostentatious behaviour. One felt that a horse with a tail like that would not have pranced so much. It stood in a small square not far from the farther end of the Karlsbruch, but it stood there only temporarily. Before deciding finally where to fix it, the town authorities had resolved, very sensibly, to judge by practical test where it would look best. Accordingly, they had made 3 rough copies of the statue, mere wooden profiles, things that would not bear looking at closely, but which, viewed from a little distance, produced all the effect that was necessary. One of these they had set up in the approach to the Franz Josef Brook, a second stood in the open space behind the theatre, and the third in the centre at the Wenzelsplatz. If George is not in the secret of this thing," said Harris. "We were walking by ourselves for an hour, he having remained behind in the hotel to write a letter to his aunt. If he has not observed these statues, then by their aid we will make a better and a thinner man of him, and that this very evening." So during dinner we sounded him judiciously, and finding him ignorant of the matter, we took him out, and led him by side streets to the place where stood the real statue. George was for looking at it and passing on, as is his way with statues, but we insisted on his pulling up and viewing the thing conscientiously. We walked him round the statue 4 times, and showed it to him from every possible point of view. I think, on the whole, we rather bored him with the thing, but our object was to impress it upon him. We told him the history of the man who rode upon the horse, the name of the artist who had made the statue, how much it weighed, how much it measured. We worked that statue into his system. By the time we had done with him, we knew more about that statue, for the time being, than he knew about anything else. So he knew more about that statue, for the time being, than he knew about anything else. We soaked him in that statue, and only let him go at last on the condition that he would come again with us in the morning, when we could all see it better, and for such purpose we saw to it that he made a note in his pocket-book of the place where the statue stood. Then we accompanied him to his favourite beer-hall, and sat beside him, telling him anecdotes of men who, unaccustomed to German beer, and drinking too much of it, had gone mad and developed homicidal mania, of men who had died young through drinking German beer, of lovers that German beer had been the means of parting for ever from beautiful girls. At 10 o'clock we started to walk back to the hotel. It was a stormy-looking night, with heavy clouds drifting over a light moon. Harris said, "We won't go back the same way we came. We'll walk back by the river. It is lovely in the moonlight." Harris told a sad history, as we walked, about a man he once knew, who is now in a home for harmless imbeciles. He said he recalled the story because it was on just such another night as this that he was walking with that man the very last time he ever saw the poor fellow. They were strolling down the Thames embankment, Harris said, and the man frightened him then by persisting that he saw the statue of the Duke of Wellington at the corner of Westminster Bridge, when, as everybody knows, it stands in Piccadilly. It was at this exact instant that we came in sight of the first of these wooden copies. It occupied the centre of a small, railed-in square a little above us on the opposite side of the way. George suddenly stood still and leant against the wall of the quay. "What's the matter?" I said. "Feeling giddy?" He said, "I do, a little. Let's rest here for a moment." He stood there with his eyes glued to the thing. He said, speaking huskily, "Talking to statues, what always strikes me is how very much one statue is like another statue." Harris said, "I cannot agree with you there. Pictures, if you like. Some pictures are very like other pictures, but where the statue there is always something distinctive. Take that statue we saw earlier in the evening," continued Harris, "before we went into the concert hall. It represented a man sitting on a horse. In Prague you will see other statues of men on horses, but nothing at all like that one." "Yes, they are," said George. "They are all alike. It's always the same horse, it's always the same man. They are all exactly alike. It's idiotic nonsense to say they are not." He appeared to be angry with Harris. "What makes you think so?" I asked. "What makes me think so?" retorted George, now turning upon me. "Why, look at that damn thing over there." I said. "What damned thing?" "Why, that thing," said George. "Look at it. There is the same horse with half a tail, standing on its hind legs. The same man without his hat. The same—" Harris said, "You are talking about the statue we saw in the Ringplatz." "No, I'm not," replied George. "I'm talking about the statue over there." "What statue?" said Harris. George looked at Harris, but Harris is a man who might, with care, have been a fair amateur actor. His face merely expressed friendly sorrow, mingled with alarm. Next, George turned his gaze on me. I endeavoured, so far as lay with me, to copy Harris's expression, adding to it, on my own account, a touch of reproof. "Will you have a cab?" I said, as kindly as I could to George. "I'll run and get one." "What the devil do I want with a cab?" he answered, ungraciously. "Can't you fellows understand a joke? It's like being out with a couple of confounded old women." Saying which, he started off across the bridge, leaving us to follow. "I am so glad that was only a joke of yours," said Harris, on our overtaking him. "I knew a case of softening of the brain that began—" "Oh, you're a silly ass," said George, cutting him short. "You know everything." He was really most unpleasant in this manner. We took him round by the river side of the theatre. We told him it was the shortest way, and as a matter of fact it was. In the open space behind the theatre stood the second of these wooden apparitions. George looked at it, and again stood still. "What's the matter?" asked Harris kindly. "You're not ill, are you?" "I don't believe this is the shortest way," said George. "I assure you it is," persisted Harris. "Well, I'm going the other," said George, and he turned and went, we, as before, following him. Along the Ferdinandstrasse, Harris and I talked about private lunatic asylums which, Harris said, were not well managed in England. He said a friend of his, a patient in a lunatic asylum— George said, interrupting him, "You appear to have a large number of friends in lunatic asylums." He said it in a most insulting tone, as though to imply that that is where one would look for the majority of Harris's friends. But Harris did not get angry. He merely replied, quite mildly, "Well, it really is extraordinary when one comes to think of it, how many of them have gone that way sooner or later. I get quite nervous sometimes now." At the corner of Wenzelsplatz, Harris, who was a few steps ahead of us, paused. "It's a fine street, isn't it?" he said, sticking his hands in his pockets and gazing up at it admiringly. George and I followed suit. 200 yards away from us, in its very centre, was the third of these ghostly statues. I think it was the best of the three, the most like, the most deceptive. It stood boldly outlined against the wild sky, the horse on its hind legs, with its curiously attenuated tail, the man bareheaded, pointing with his plumed hat to the now entirely visible moon. I think, if you don't mind," said George. He spoke with almost a pathetic ring in his voice. His aggressiveness had completely fallen from him. "That I will have a cab, if there's one handy." "I thought you were looking queer," said Harris kindly. "It's your head, isn't it?" "Perhaps it is," answered George. "I have noticed it coming on," said Harris, "but I didn't like to say anything to you. You fancy you see things, don't you?" No, it isn't that," replied George rather quickly. "I don't know what it is." "I do," said Harris solemnly, "and I'll tell you. It's this German beer that you are drinking. I've known a case where a man— Don't tell me about him just now," said George. "I dare say it's true, but somehow I don't feel I want to hear about him." "You're not used to it," said Harris. "I shall give it up from tonight," said George. "I think you must be right. It doesn't seem to agree with me." We took him home and saw him to bed. He was very gentle and quite grateful. One evening later on, after a long day's ride, followed by a most satisfactory dinner, we started him on a big cigar and, removing things from his reach, told him of this stratagem that, for his good, we had planned. "How many copies of that statue did you say we saw?" asked George after we had finished. 3, replied Harris. Only 3, said George. Are you sure? Positive, replied Harris. Why? Oh, nothing, answered George. But I don't think you quite believed Harris. From Prague we travelled to Nuremberg through Carlsbad. Good Germans, when they die, go, they say, to Carlsbad, as good Americans to Paris. This I doubt, seeing that it is a small place with no convenience for a crowd. In Carlsbad you rise at 5, the fashionable hour for promenade, when the band plays under the colonnade, and the Sprudel is filled with a packed throng over a mile long, being from 6 to 8 in the morning. Here you may hear more languages spoken than the Tower of Babel could have echoed. Polish Jews and Russian princes, Chinese mandarins and Turkish pashas, Norwegians looking as if they had stepped out of Ibsen's plays, women from the boulevards, Spanish grandees and English countesses, mountaineers from Montenegro, and millionaires from Chicago you will find every dozen yards. Every luxury in the world Carlsbad provides for its visitors, with the one exception of pepper. That you cannot get within 5 miles of the town for money. What you can get there for love is not worth taking away. Pepper, to the liver brigade that forms 4/5 of Carlsbad's customers, is poison, and prevention being better than the cure, it is carefully kept out of the neighbourhood. Pepper parties are formed in Carlsbad to journey to some place without the boundary, and there indulge in pepper orgies. Nuremberg, if one expects a town of medieval appearance, disappoints. Quaint corners, picturesque glimpses there are in plenty, but everywhere they are surrounded and intruded upon by the modern, and even what is ancient is not nearly so ancient as one thought it was. After all, a town, like a woman, is only as old as it looks, and Nuremberg is still a comfortable-looking dame, its age somewhat difficult to conceive under its fresh paint and stucco in the blaze of the gas and electric light. Still, looking closely, you may see its wrinkled walls and grey towers. That brings us to the end of the chapter, and where I was planning to finish reading for tonight. Thank you for listening. And I feel like we may have something to discuss about, this isn't, for those coming in, again, thank you for the raid, this isn't like a sort of book club where we, dissect and discuss things. But that, we sometimes fall into that anyway. Dark Squaw from the same town as Jerome K. Jerome. Neat. That's super cool. Yeah, I read, I say we, because this channel is from me and my partner Lucy. Hey, you're welcome, my mate Jeans. Again, you know what, I'm going to give you a shout out, if I can remember. There, actually, because that helps me. When I say that helps me, I mean because it pops up a little thing at the top of chat where I can just click that heart and follow your channel, which I've now done. Pepper orgies is a wild place to finish. Yeah, that's yep. I pre-read what's coming up on stream just to check it for stuff. Has proved valuable today because I started out the stream saying it, so why not close it out as well? This one, literally this section tonight where I started, had a bit of a, to put it politely, uncomfortable section, which I chose to skip past because we read old books on this channel, and unfortunately old books tend to come sometimes, not always, but sometimes with some unfortunate old-timey language, terminology, or attitudes, and so we don't do that because it's not cool. So yeah, chose to skip that, but in doing that also encountered the apparently the pepper orgies of Carlsbad is a hell of a concept, and sure, why not have, we've already got Eternal Soup as an emote. Why not have pepper parties? We could do that. We could design that emote during book week, maybe. Sad the statue didn't have a hammer and anvil. That is another one that I knew people would go for. I was like, ooh, does he have a hammer in his hand? No, he doesn't, just his hat. I was a little bit disappointed on your behalf, but, you know, such is life. You would absolutely attend a pepper orgy. This is a public place. You are sharing this information on the internet where other people can read it. Just reminding you. Yeah, I don't know. There were bits in this that made me uncomfortable. Like, I don't know, that line at the end. I know, like, the character of Jerome in this book is kind of an ass. For the pepper, yeah, of course. Good sneezes. No, you gremlins, you need to stop. The bit at the end where it's like, after all, a town like a woman is only as old as it looks. I'm like, I'm not a big fan of that line. A woman is only as old as you. And yeah, I get like the time it was written and stuff, but I don't know, that for me didn't ring too comfortable. Yeah, I don't know. What else came up? Were there other things? You don't like the taste of pepper? I'll sprinkle some pepper on some things. It's like for me it's basic seasoning. It's just like, it's a form of heat, but it's like a real simple, narrow. It's just like, it's like a stab of pain. It doesn't have like the warm glow of like a chili or something like that. It's an odd, yeah, it has its place, exactly. Where was I saying? What was I saying? Where was I going? Yeah, we read 3 Men in a Boat last year. Was it? No, it wasn't last year, was it? It was 2 years ago, because time is a joke. And we're all owed like a 3-month rebate this year for the, I said it last time, it should be mid-May, but it's August apparently, so, sure, whatever. Yeah, read 3 Men in a Boat like 2 years ago now, and really enjoyed it. It was a tremendous amount of fun. We used to have a pub called the 3 Men in a Boat. Excellent. I mean, if you would, I suppose, if it's the town where Jerome is from. Oh, you're going to ask if this is a sequel? Yes, it is. Yes. Yeah, the story apparently is like 3 Men in a Boat was a wild success, and so I think I say the story apparently, then completely forget to remember the actual details of it. Whether it was, I think he didn't really find anything else took off as well. Like he couldn't quite sort of recreate the same magic, so just sort of went sequel and just wrote a second one where this time they go on, rather than getting on a boat and successfully failing to sail up the Thames, or paddle up the Thames, they go on a bike ride across Germany instead. Second verse, same as the first, yeah. Damn it, I always forget the next lines after that. Damn it. Let myself down. Yeah. I mean, I liked how when we finished, where we finished last time at the end of chapter 5, he's gone to great lengths, like real extensively driving home the point that there will be no information in this book. I will tell you nothing of use. I am not here to describe towns and cities. I'm not here to describe people. I'm just going to give you an account of things that happen, and that's it. And then immediately goes into excruciatingly detailed descriptions of everything that he sees and the places he goes to. When Germany was quite a bit bigger, apparently. Yeah, one or two things may have happened in the course of history between the point at which this book was written today. This was published in, I think, 1990? 1900. Why the hell? 1890? 1900? Yeah. This was written in 1990. Would you believe? It's weird that it's in the public domain. My My brain is cooked. I'm very sorry. Right century, wrong end. Oh, oh no, I hate that. That's, don't like saying that. Yeah. Its sequel, Three Men on the Bummel, appeared in 1900 and described a hilarious cycling tour through Germany's Black Forest. Ugh. Yeah, which, as I said earlier, is like, honestly, it's kind of sad that 1914 is the right numbers. Yeah. Like, it's sad. This was written, like, 10 years before the places he's talking about would be obliterated by war. And, like, no, 1990 was not 35 years ago. It's 15 years ago. Shut up. Yeah, like, not hee comedy books, silly bumbling men fooling about in Germany and getting things wrong all the time, hee hoo, and then war. Like, but as I said, like earlier, these are the places he's talking about. Like, a lot of the names of these towns and regions and stuff are, frankly, ones that I first encountered and learned about through learning the frankly tragic history of Europe in school, and like GCSE history and stuff, talking about World War One and World War Two, and it's like, this was, this was not long before that, and damn, that's sad. That's just really sad. Yeah, I don't know, that kind of, it sort of gets to me a bit, really, just kind of looking at that and being like, wow, that's really messed up. The little joking reference in the earlier part about having professional goofy stereotypes to prevent countries going to war with each other hits a little different. It does, like, yeah, reading that as being like, yeah, again, like, hee bonk, what if they made like silly little figures to, if every country, simply the line about it's hard or impossible to kill something that makes you laugh or whatever, and like, yeah, where, like, I want the way he phrased it. Where, no, come on, where are you? You cannot be amused at a thing and at the same time want to kill it. It's like, yeah, that in context, that hits. Walsall is in the Black Country, and the accent is supposedly one of the oldest in the country. Went from here to Stourbridge, other side of Birmingham, and then on to London. He was there to freeman of the borough for serving in the First World War. I've read his Wikipedia page. I'm not, that's the level of my expertise here. I'm trying to think whether I had picked up that he actually served in World War One. Damn. Yeah. I mean, I did read that, like, his writing after this fact, and probably around that time, like, it turned darker, as I imagine happened for a lot of people at the time. Like, that, again, like, that's, I don't know how familiar he actually was with Germany when writing this. Like, there is a level of detail there to which I expect it's hard to do if you haven't been there and seen these things yourself. But also the fact that he's sort of deliberately writing as a goofy, bumbling clown. Like, he worked as an ambulance driver in France. Oh, that does ring a bell. Wow. Yeah, like, when you're kind of deliberately writing this under the umbrella of there will be no facts in this book, there will be no information. I think he was too old for the army. Wow. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I don't know. And again, it's like, if you have actually been through these areas and seen these places, and it's you can't write this way about that sort of stuff without some sort of love and affection for it. Clearly, like, that to me comes through in the text. Like, he's he's goofing and clowning about these friends based on real friends, but there seems to be a love of travel and of going places and seeing things and experiencing new cultures and stuff. And yeah, I'm just making myself sad thinking about this. Like someone who, yeah, just you know, can sort of fit it together for yourself. I'm sort of running short on words for it, but boy, yeah, that's just sad. So on that downer of a note, whee, I'm gonna close out the stream, I think. But yeah, we are. What is coming up? I feel like I want to skim back through this and find more things to talk about. Thank you for streaming. You're welcome. Thank you for the raid. Thank you for coming over. We do this as often as possible. The schedule is me reading something on Saturday evenings, like in the UK, Saturday evenings. This time you start like 2.5 hours ago from now, wherever you may be. And then Lucy, the other person on this channel, my partner, she reads on Wednesday evenings. And usually the schedule, which we try to stick to, but I sort of broke with tradition for this, is one of us reads something longer, sort of more novel length over multiple streams, and the other of us reads short stories. So the idea being that it provides a bit of like an entry point. So if you're new to the channel, and frankly, as has happened this evening, if you're new to the channel and you come in and it's like, oh, chapter 8 of book, well, I don't really, I haven't caught the other 7 chapters before it. Will I be able to keep up? Usually, that's why we have like one person doing short stories, because it creates like a more convenient entry point. But yeah, this one's very episodic, and frankly, it's written with a very like scatterbrained approach. Like you can pretty much drop in anywhere and simultaneously have no clue what he's talking about in the grand scheme of things, and get a farcical account of something that may or may not have happened to him or one of his friends or someone he knew or his uncle. So it is a very easy book to drop in on. But yeah, on Wednesdays, Lucy is still reading through Barchester Towers by Anthony Trollope, which is just all of the drama, just a whole lot of people talking to each other, and a lot of drama to go with it. And then coming up in under a week, is it Thursday, Friday? I think we may need to actually like clarify exactly what day we're starting on. It is the anniversary of this channel, for which we partake in Book Week until we can think of, this is like our 3rd year of doing this, Book Week, until we can think of something better to call it, to give it its full name. And that's where we try to do like a week of streams and events, something every day. And yeah, we sort of announced early plans. I mean, it's all getting late now. It's been 3 years. You're pretty sure the name is just Book Week now? No, Book Week, to give it its full working title. Yeah, so that's coming up, and we've still got a bit of organising to do for it, but that's exciting for us. Leaving you with this one, one of your favourite quotes of his. Sorry, I'm struggling to read this evening. Nothing is more beautiful than the love that has weathered the storms of life. The love of the young for the young, that is the beginning of life. But the love of the old for the old, that is the beginning of things longer. That's, yeah, wow. I didn't expect to get hit quite so hard by a quote like that. Thank you. That's actually really lovely. Alright, well, I'm going to go message someone to tell them what they mean to me, and I advise you all to go and do the same. But yeah, I'm going to take off. Thank you all for being here. You've been a wonderful, lovely audience. And yeah, look for us in the week. We'll be back on, I don't actually remember if Lucy's planning to stream on Wednesday, but either starting on Thursday or Friday, more streams, things happening here, and yeah, we will have some variety coming up for you to enjoy. So yeah, thank you, and go take care of yourselves and have a good rest of whatever weekend is left to you. Goodbye and good night.